They say you never really know someone until you see what they're capable of when they think no one's watching. That night at my birthday dinner, I learned the truth about trust, betrayal, and why my mother's whispered words would unravel a secret so dark it would change our family forever. I'm Grace, and this is my story. The candles on my 28th birthday cake were still smoking when I heard it. That whisper. You know the kind. The one that cuts through laughter and clinking glasses like a knife through butter. Mom leaned into Dad's ear, her hand trembling slightly as she gripped his sleeve, and said words that made the whole room feel like it tilted on its axis. While everyone's here, tell your son to go change the locks at her apartment. The way she said her dripped with something I'd never heard from my mother before. Pure, unfiltered disgust. My older brother Jake went rigid in his chair, his fork halfway to his mouth. He was always the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong, the one who'd married his high school sweetheart Emma 3 years ago in a wedding that cost more than my car. Emma sat beside him, her perfectly manicured nails wrapped around a wine glass, her smile frozen, like someone had hit pause on her face. She looked confused, maybe a little annoyed, but mostly just checked out. Story of their marriage, honestly. Jake pushed back from the table without a word, grabbed his keys, and walked out. Just like that. No explanation, no "I'll be right back," nothing. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frames on the wall, and suddenly my birthday dinner felt less like a celebration and more like the calm before a tornado touches down. Dad wouldn't look at anyone. He just kept cutting his steak into smaller and smaller pieces, his jaw working like he was chewing on broken glass instead of prime rib. My younger sister Maya caught my eye across the table, and I could see the question written all over her face. What the hell just happened? I shrugged because, honestly, I had no clue. Mom had gone completely silent, staring at her plate like she could will herself to disappear into the mashed potatoes. Emma finally broke the silence, her voice pitched high and tight. Did Jake just leave? Where did he go? Someone want to fill me in on what's happening here? She looked around the table, her eyes landing on each of us like she was a prosecutor, and we were all witnesses holding back testimony. Nobody answered her. What were we supposed to say? We were all in the dark just as much as she was. The minutes crawled like hours. I tried to make small talk, something about work, something about the weather, anything, to fill the suffocating quiet that had settled over the table like a wet blanket. Maya attempted to salvage what was left of the evening by suggesting we cut the cake, but her voice came out all wrong. Too bright, too forced. Mom just shook her head slowly, methodically folding and refolding her napkin until the cloth looked like origami gone wrong. When Jake came back an hour later, I swear to God, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. No, scratch that. He looked like he'd become a ghost. His face had gone from his usual healthy tan to the color of old newspaper. All the blood drained right out of him. His hands were shaking so bad he had to shove them in his pockets, and his eyes were wild, darting around the room like he didn't know where to land them. He walked straight to Mom, bent down, and whispered something that made her close her eyes and nod once, sharp and final. The thing about family dinners is that they're supposed to be safe. They're supposed to be the place where you can let your guard down, where you don't have to perform or pretend or wonder if the person passing you the rolls is secretly judging every choice you've ever made. But right then, sitting at that table with my half-eaten birthday cake and my family, who suddenly felt like strangers, I realized that safety is just an illusion we tell ourselves to get through the day. Jake's voice came out hoarse when he finally spoke, like he'd been screaming for hours even though I knew he hadn't. Mom, there... He couldn't finish. He just stood there, his whole body trembling, and I watched my strong, confident, never-rattled brother crumble into something small and scared and completely lost. Emma stood up so fast, her chair scraped against the hardwood floor with a sound that made everyone wince. There what? Would someone please tell me what the hell is going on? Jake, look at me. Her voice cracked on his name, and for the first time since they'd gotten married, I saw something real flash across her face. Fear. Pure, undiluted fear. Dad stood up too, his napkin falling to the floor forgotten. Jake, son, what did you find? His voice was steady, that same calm he'd used when I was 8 and fell off my bike and broke my arm. The voice that said, no matter what happens, we'll handle it. We're family. But even he couldn't hide the tremor underneath, the current of dread running through every syllable. And that's when Jake pulled out his phone, and everything, I mean everything, went straight to hell. The photos loaded slowly, painfully, each one worse than the last. I couldn't see them from where I was sitting, but I watched my father's face go from concerned to confused to absolutely horrified in the span of about 10 seconds. Mom covered her mouth with both hands, making small sounds in the back of her throat that reminded me of a wounded animal. Maya stood up to look, then immediately sat back down, her face gone green.
I didn't want to look. God, I really didn't want to look. But Jake turned the phone toward me and I saw it. Emma's apartment, the one she'd kept even after marrying Jake, the one she'd claimed she needed for work purposes because she worked late hours as a real estate agent, and sometimes it was just easier to crash there than drive the 40 minutes back to their house. The apartment my brother had just changed the locks on, presumably because something was very, very wrong. The photos showed the bedroom, her bedroom, and it wasn't empty. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might throw up right there on my mother's good china. The man in the photos wasn't just some random hookup, some meaningless affair that could maybe, possibly be explained away or worked through or forgiven, given enough time in therapy. No, this was calculated. This was intentional. This was someone Emma knew, someone she'd been with for a while based on the casual comfort displayed in those images. Someone who clearly had keys to her place, who felt comfortable enough to be photographed sleeping in her bed, wearing her robe, drinking coffee from her mugs. But here's the thing that really twisted the knife, the part that made this whole situation go from bad to absolutely catastrophic. The man in those photos was Paul Richardson, Jake's best friend since kindergarten, his best man at the wedding, the guy who'd loaned Jake money when his business was struggling last year, the guy who came over for Sunday football and called my parents mom and dad, and was supposed to be family. Emma went white, like horror movie white. Her mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out, just these pathetic little gasping sounds like a fish drowning in air. She grabbed for Jake's arm, but he jerked away from her like she was on fire. And the look on his face, I'll never forget it. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was betrayal so profound it had physically altered his features into something I didn't recognize. "Baby, I can explain," Emma finally managed to choke out, and I almost left. Almost. Because that's what they always say, isn't it? Like there's some magical explanation that makes finding your wife in bed with your best friend somehow okay, somehow understandable, somehow forgivable, given enough time in therapy. No, this was calculated. This was intentional. This was someone Emma knew, someone she'd been with for a while based on the casual comfort displayed in those images, someone who clearly had keys to her place, who felt comfortable enough to be photographed sleeping in her bed, wearing her robe, drinking coffee from her mugs. But here's the thing that really twisted the knife, the part that made this whole situation go from bad to absolutely catastrophic. The man in those photos was Paul Richardson, Jake's best friend since kindergarten, his best man at the wedding, the guy who'd loaned Jake money when his business was struggling last year, the guy who came over for Sunday football and called my parents mom and dad, and was supposed to be family. Emma went white, like horror movie ghost white. Her mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out, just these pathetic little gasping sounds like a fish drowning in air. She grabbed for Jake's arm, but he jerked away from her like she was on fire, and the look on his face, I'll never forget it. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was betrayal so profound it had physically altered his features into something I didn't recognize. "Baby, I can explain," Emma finally managed to choke out, and I almost left. Almost. Because that's what they always say, isn't it? Like there's some magical explanation that makes finding your wife in bed with your best friend somehow okay, somehow understandable, somehow forgivable, given enough time in therapy. No. This was calculated. This was intentional. This was someone Emma knew,
someone she'd been with for a while based on the casual comfort displayed in those images, someone who clearly had keys to her place, who felt comfortable enough to be photographed sleeping in her bed, wearing her robe, drinking coffee from her mugs. But here's the thing that really twisted the knife, the part that made this whole situation go from bad to absolutely catastrophic. The man in those photos was Paul Richardson, Jake's best friend since kindergarten, his best man at the wedding, the guy who'd loaned Jake money when his business was struggling last year, the guy who came over for Sunday football and called my parents mom and dad, and was supposed to be family. 3 years, the length of their entire marriage. Every anniversary, every holiday, every I love you had been a lie. Every time Paul came over for dinner, every fishing trip they'd taken together, every goddamn moment had been a performance, an elaborate show put on for Jake's benefit, while Emma and Paul laughed behind his back. Maya started crying, quiet tears sliding down her face. She'd always looked up to Emma, saw her as this perfect example of what a wife should be. Successful, beautiful, seemingly devoted. The crash of that pedestal must have echoed in her head like thunder. Jake turned to leave, just turned and headed for the door, and Emma lunged after him, grabbing his shirt, his arm, anything she could reach. Please, Jake, please let me explain. It's not what you think. It just happened. We didn't mean for it to happen. We tried to stop, but... He whirled on her with such fury that she stumbled backward. You tried to stop? For 3 years, you tried to stop? Every time you kissed me, every time you laid in our bed, every time you said you loved me, you were trying to stop? He was shaking again, but this time it wasn't shock. This was pure, righteous anger. Get out of my parents' house. Get out right now before I say something I can't take back. She looked around the table wildly, searching for an ally, someone who would defend her, or at least soften the blow. Her eyes landed on me, and I saw the desperation there. Grace, please, you understand, right? Sometimes things just happen. Sometimes you can't help who you fall for. Get out. My voice surprised me with how cold it sounded, how final. This was my brother, my flesh and blood, and this woman had spent 3 years systematically destroying him from the inside out. Whatever sympathy I might have had evaporated the second I saw those photos, saw the betrayal etched into every pixel. She grabbed her purse and ran, actually ran, her heels clicking frantically against the floor, the door slamming behind her hard enough to rattle the windows. We all just sat there in the aftermath, breathing hard like we'd all just run a marathon, surrounded by the ruins of what was supposed to be a celebration. Jake sank into the nearest chair, his head in his hands. 3 years, he kept repeating, like he couldn't make his brain accept it. 3 goddamn years. How did I not see it? How did I not know? Dad moved to his side, his hand heavy on Jake's shoulder. You trusted her, son. You trusted them both. That's not a weakness. That's not something to be ashamed of. They betrayed that trust. That's on them, not you. But I could see it eating at Jake. See the way he was already rewriting every memory, questioning every moment, doubting every instinct he'd ever had. That's what betrayal does. It doesn't just destroy your present. It poisons your past and makes you terrified of your future. Mom finally spoke, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry I did it this way. I'm sorry I ruined your birthday, Grace. But I couldn't let it go on any longer. I couldn't watch him be made a fool of for one more day. She looked at Jake with such fierce, protective love that my own eyes started burning. You deserve better than this. You deserve so much better than this. The weeks that followed were brutal. Jake moved back home temporarily, couldn't stand to be in the house he'd shared with Emma, couldn't sleep in the bed where God knows what had happened. He hired a divorce lawyer, a shark of a woman named Patricia who smiled when she heard the details of the case, and promised to take Emma for everything she was worth. Turned out, Emma had been using marital funds to pay for that apartment, had been writing off expensive dinners and hotel rooms as business expenses, while she and Paul lived it up on Jake's dime. The really messed up part? Paul was married too, had been married for 5 years to a woman named Cheryl who worked as a pediatric nurse and volunteered at the animal shelter on weekends. Sweet, kind Cheryl who baked cookies for Jake and Emma's anniversary party and had no idea her husband was living a double life. When Jake told her, and he did tell her, drove straight to their house with those photos because she deserved to know, she threw up on her front lawn and then calmly asked Jake to please leave because she needed to go inside and burn every piece of clothing Paul owned. The divorce proceedings turned nasty fast. Emma tried to claim she deserved half of everything, including Jake's business that he'd built from the ground up before they'd even met. She actually had the audacity to see she'd supported him emotionally during the hard times, that she'd earned her share. Her lawyer painted her as a woman trapped in a loveless marriage, as someone who'd found comfort in the arms of another man because her husband was always working, always busy, never gave her the attention she deserved. It was complete and total bull, and Jake's lawyer tore her arguments apart piece by piece. Phone records showing hundreds of texts between Emma and Paul, credit card statements showing charges at hotels when Emma was supposed to be showing properties, testimony from a private investigator Mom had hired after walking in on them, tracking their movements for 2 weeks and documenting every lunch, every meeting, every stolen afternoon while Jake was working his tail off to provide for his wife. The judge, a severe-looking woman in her 60s who'd apparently dealt with more than her fair share of cheating spouses, didn't have much sympathy for Emma's position. She awarded Jake the house, the business, most of their savings, everything except what Emma had brought into the marriage herself. Jake didn't care about the money. He would have given it all away just to undo the last 3 years. But there was satisfaction in watching Emma realize that actions have consequences, that you can't just blow up someone's life and walk away unscathed. Paul lost even more. Cheryl took him for everything, cleaned him out so thoroughly that he had to move in with his elderly mother and drive a 15-year-old Honda with a busted taillight. His reputation in their small business community was destroyed. Nobody wants to work with a guy who'll stab his best friend in the back without a second thought. Last I heard, he'd moved 3 states away, trying to start over where nobody knew his name or his history. Emma tried to reach out to Jake a few times after the divorce was finalized. Long, rambling emails about how she'd made a mistake, how she'd been confused, how she really did love him, and could they please try again. He blocked her on everything: phone, email, social media, the works. Mom wanted to send her a strongly worded letter involving several creative suggestions about where Emma could shove her apologies, but Dad talked her down. "The best revenge is living well," he said. "Let her drown in her own regret." Maya took the whole thing harder than I expected. She stopped dating for a while, convinced that if Emma, perfect, beautiful, seemingly devoted Emma, could be secretly evil, then how could she trust anyone? It took months of therapy and long talks with Mom before she could even consider putting herself out there again. When she finally did start seeing someone new, a guy named Marcus, who worked in IT and collected vintage comic books, she made him meet the entire family within the first month. "If he's going to be a disaster, I want to know early," she said, only half joking. As for me, my birthday became this weird anniversary of destruction that I both dreaded and felt strangely grateful for. Dreaded because, obviously, nobody wants their birthday associated with family trauma and betrayal. Grateful because sometimes you need everything to explode before you can rebuild something better, something real. Jake slowly came back to himself, but he was different, more cautious, less quick to trust, but also more grounded somehow. He threw himself into his business, expanding and growing it until he had to hire a whole team to keep up with demand. He started going to therapy, working through the betrayal and the self-doubt and all the what-ifs that haunted him in the middle of the night. And eventually, carefully, he started dating again. Her name was Sophia, and she was nothing like Emma. Where Emma had been all flash and performance, Sophia was quiet and genuine. She was a teacher at the local elementary school, drove a beat-up station wagon, and wore the same sneakers until they literally fell apart. She knew Jake's history from day one, because he'd learned his lesson about secrets and omissions. On their first date, he laid it all out. The betrayal, the divorce, the trust issues, everything. Most women would have run for the hills. Sophia ordered another beer and said, "That sounds rough. Want to talk about it? Or would you rather play trivia? Because I'm weirdly good at 80s music trivia, and I need someone to appreciate that." They got married 2 years later in a small ceremony in my parents' backyard. No big production, no expensive venue, just family and close friends. And vows that made everyone cry because you could feel the honesty in every word. When Jake looked at Sophia and promised to love her, to trust her, to choose her every single day, I believed him. We all did. And when she promised the same back, there wasn't a doubt in anyone's mind that she meant it. The day Jake got married, Emma sent him a text, just one line. "I hope you're happy." He showed it to Sophia, and she just laughed. "Should I respond?" he asked, and Sophia shook her head. She already knows the answer. You are happy. That's the whole point.
He never responded, just deleted the message and put his phone away. That night, watching him dance with Sophia while Maya and Marcus attempted to teach my parents some modern dance moves, and Dad pretended to be annoyed while clearly enjoying himself, I felt something shift. The scar tissue that had formed around our family was still there. You don't go through something like that without marks. But we'd survived. More than survived, actually. We'd come out stronger, more honest, more appreciative of what we had. Mom pulled me aside at one point during the reception, her eyes bright with tears she was trying not to shed. "I'm sorry again about your birthday," she said, not for the first time. "I know I turned it into something awful." I hugged her tight, breathing in her familiar perfume and feeling more grateful than I'd ever been. "You saved him," I told her. "You saw something wrong and you fixed it. Yeah, it sucked in the moment, but you saved him from wasting more years with someone who didn't deserve him. That's the best gift you could have given any of us." The truth about betrayal is that it's a theft. Emma didn't just cheat on Jake, she stole 3 years of his life. 3 years he could have spent finding someone who actually loved him. She stole his trust, his confidence, his ability to believe in people. But here's the thing about theft. You can press charges. You can demand restitution. You can refuse to let the thief define your story. Jake could have become bitter. He could have decided all women were liars, could have built walls so high nobody could climb them, could have let Emma's betrayal poison the rest of his life. But he didn't. He chose to heal instead. He chose to believe that one person's cruelty didn't define humanity. He chose Sophia, chose happiness, chose to trust again, even when it was terrifying. As for Emma and Paul, I heard through the grapevine that they lasted about 8 months together after the divorces were finalized. Turns out, when you build a relationship on lies and betrayal, it doesn't have much of a foundation. They couldn't trust each other, go figure, and the guilt and shame of what they'd done ate away at whatever they thought they had. Emma moved to California, working some dead-end job and living in a studio apartment that probably cost more than my mortgage. Paul was still with his mother, last I heard, working at a call center and spending his weekends alone. Was I happy they were miserable? I'd be lying if I said there wasn't some satisfaction in knowing karma had caught up with them. But mostly, I just felt sad for all the pain they'd caused, all the lives they'd damaged because they couldn't control themselves, couldn't be honest, couldn't think about anyone but themselves. The moral of this whole twisted story: you can't build happiness on someone else's pain. You can't create love out of lies. And you definitely can't betray the people who trust you most and expect to walk away without consequences. Emma and Paul thought they were being clever, thought they could have their cake and eat it too,
thought they could keep everyone in the dark forever. But secrets have a way of coming to light, usually at the worst possible moment. And when they do, they burn everything they touch. My mom whispered those words at my birthday dinner. Tell your son to go change the locks at her apartment, and set off a chain reaction that destroyed a marriage but saved my brother's future. Sometimes the truth is brutal. Sometimes it shows up at your birthday dinner and ruins what should be a celebration. But it's still the truth. And the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than living a lie. Jake's got Sophia now, and she's exactly what he deserves. Someone real, someone honest, someone who chooses him every single day without reservation or secret agendas. Emma's got whatever life she's scraped together in California, living with the consequences of her choices. And Paul's got his mother's basement and his shame. As for me, I learned that family isn't perfect. But when things get real, when everything falls apart and the world feels like it's ending, your people will show up. They'll sit with you in the rubble. They'll help you change the locks on the parts of your life that need protecting. They'll tell you the truth, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because sometimes that's what love looks like. Every year now, my birthday is a little bittersweet. We gather around the same table with one very different face where Emma used to sit, and we celebrate not just another year of my life, but another year of survival, of healing, of choosing honesty over comfort and truth over convenience. We raise our glasses and make our toasts, and nobody mentions the elephant that used to be in the room, because she's not our elephant anymore. She's someone else's problem now, living with the weight of her own choices somewhere far away. Last year, Jake stood up during the birthday toast and said something that made everyone stop and listen. Grace, he said, his arm around Sophia's shoulders, your 28th birthday was the worst night of my life. But it was also the beginning of the best thing that ever happened to me. Because if Mom hadn't told me that night, if I hadn't changed those locks, I might still be living that lie. I might never have met Sophia. I might never have known what real love actually feels like. So thank you for sharing your birthday with my awakening. Thank you for being patient while we all fell apart and put ourselves back together. And thank you for being the kind of sister who didn't judge, who didn't say, I told you so, who just loved me through the worst time of my life. I cried. We all cried. Even Dad, who usually saves his emotions for sports championships and military movies. Because that's what family does. We break together and heal together and come out the other side scarred but stronger. The locks got changed that night, literally and metaphorically. Jake changed the locks on Emma's apartment, sure, but we all changed the locks on our willingness to accept lies, on our tolerance for betrayal, on our capacity to ignore red flags in the name of keeping the peace. We learned that peace built on deception isn't peace at all. It's just delayed devastation. So yeah, my 28th birthday was a disaster wrapped in a nightmare, served with a side of family trauma. But it was also the night we all learned who we could trust, who we could count on, and who deserved a place at our table. Emma's chair is filled now with someone who earned that spot through honesty and kindness and genuine love. Paul's friendship has been replaced with real friends who would never dream of such betrayal. And Jake, strong, resilient, better for it, Jake, is happier than I've ever seen him, building a life with someone who sees him, really sees him, and chooses him every single day without hesitation. That's the real revenge right there. Not the money, not the public humiliation, not the destroyed reputations. The real revenge is living so well, loving so honestly, and being so genuinely happy that the people who tried to hurt you become irrelevant. They fade into the background noise of your past while you're too busy enjoying your present to notice. Mom's whisper started it all, unraveled the lie that was slowly suffocating my brother. And sure, it ruined my birthday party. Sure, it created a moment so awkward and painful that we'll probably be processing it in therapy for years to come. But it also freed us freed Jake from a toxic marriage, freed our family from pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't, freed all of us from the weight of carrying someone else's secrets. So here's what I learned from the birthday dinner that became ground zero for family warfare. The truth will set you free, but first, it'll wreck everything you thought you knew. Trust is precious and should never be given lightly, but it should be given, because living behind walls is no way to live at all. And karma? Karma's real, patient, and absolutely ruthless when it finally shows up to collect. Emma and Paul made their choices. They chose deception over honesty, momentary pleasure over lasting integrity, their own desires over the people who loved them most, and they're living with those choices now, wherever they are, probably wondering how it all went so wrong so fast. We made our choices too. We chose truth, painful as it was. We chose family. We chose to heal instead of fester. And we're living with those choices too, gathered around the same table year after year, celebrating not just birthdays, but survival, resilience, and the unshakable bond of people who've been through hell together and came out holding hands. That's the real moral of this story, the one that's taken me years to fully understand. You can't control other people's choices, their betrayals, their capacity for deception, but you can control your response. You can choose to let it destroy you, or define you, or drive you to become something better. You can choose betterness, or you can choose healing. You can choose to close yourself off forever, or you can choose to trust again, carefully, with people who've proven they deserve it.
Jake chose Sophia. I chose to keep celebrating my birthday despite the baggage. Maya chose to love again despite her shattered illusions. Mom chose to be the bad guy for a night to save her son from years of pain. Dad chose to stand beside all of us, steady as always, a lighthouse in the storm. And Emma? Emma chose her path the day she started lying to the man who loved her. She's walking it now, alone, probably wondering if it was worth it. Spoiler alert, it never is. Betrayal might feel good in the moment, might feel exciting or forbidden or justified, but eventually you have to look at yourself in the mirror and live with what you've done. And that's a sentence that lasts a lot longer than any divorce proceedings. So yeah, that's my story. The birthday dinner that blew up my family and put it back together stronger than before. The night my mom whispered 7 words that changed everything. The moment my brother's world fell apart so it could be rebuilt into something real. It's messy and painful and probably could have been handled better, but it's ours. It's real. And it's proof that sometimes the worst moments of your life are doorways to the best ones, if you're brave enough to walk through them instead of pretending they're not there. Every year now, when we gather for my birthday, there's this moment right before we cut the cake. A pause, a breath, a shared glance around the table at the faces that matter. The ones that stayed, the ones that proved themselves when it counted. And every year, I'm grateful. Grateful for the explosion that cleared the air. Grateful for the truth that hurt but healed. Grateful for the family that loved me enough to ruin my party in order to save my brother. That's real love right there. Not the pretty, Instagram perfect kind, the messy, complicated, sometimes brutal kind that shows up when it counts and doesn't leave just because things get hard. The kind that whispers uncomfortable truths at birthday dinners and changes locks and stands beside you while everything falls apart. The kind that Emma and Paul will probably never understand. And honestly, that's their loss. Because we're over here living our best lives, loving honestly, trusting carefully but wholly, and building something that won't crumble the moment someone shines a light on it. We're solid. We're real. We're the kind of family that survives betrayal and comes out laughing on the other side, scars and all. And Emma, wherever she is, I hope she's learned something. I hope she's figured out that you can't build happiness on someone else's pain, can't create love out of lies, can't expect to destroy people without consequences.
I hope she's become someone better, someone honest, someone who would never make those choices again. But mostly, I just hope she stays far away from my family, away from my birthday dinners, away from the life we've built in the aftermath of her destruction. We've got a new normal now, a better normal, and there's no place in it for people who can't tell the truth.
That's the ultimate karma, really. Not that Emma and Paul are miserable, though honestly, that doesn't hurt. The ultimate karma is that we're happy, genuinely, messily, imperfectly happy. And they gave us that gift by removing themselves from our lives, by showing us who they really were, by forcing us to rebuild something stronger from the ashes of what they destroyed. So, thanks, Emma. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the worst birthday dinner ever, for the pain and the tears and the trust issues. Thanks for teaching us what betrayal looks like so we can recognize it from a mile away. Thanks for showing us who you really were before we wasted any more years on you. And thanks, most of all, for leaving, for taking your poison somewhere else and giving us the space to heal, to grow, to become the people we were meant to be all along. We're better without you. We're happy without you. We're whole without you. And that, more than any divorce settlement or public humiliation or destroyed reputation, is the revenge that really matters. We won. Not because we destroyed you, but because we built something beautiful in the space you used to occupy. And you'll never be able to touch that, never be able to taint it, never be able to take it away. That's the moral. That's the lesson. That's the truth that came out on my 28th birthday and changed everything. The best revenge is living so well that the people who hurt you become irrelevant. Not forgotten, the scars are still there, but irrelevant. Background noise. A cautionary tale we tell to remind ourselves how far we've come. And we've come so far. Further than I ever imagined possible that night when Jake came back pale as death and my birthday dinner turned into a war zone. We've healed, grown, loved, trusted, and rebuilt. We've proven that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of the story, just a really rough chapter that makes the happy ending that much sweeter. So here's to messy families and ruined birthday dinners and whispered truths that destroy lies. Here's to changed locks and new beginnings and second chances with people who deserve them. Here's to choosing honesty over comfort, truth over convenience, and real love over pretty performances. And here's to karma, patient and inevitable, making sure that what goes around comes around, that betrayal has consequences, and that people who play with fire usually end up burned. We're good. We're whole. We're happy. And that's all that matters.